hear people talk, and Plano kind of prides itself on, do the right thing, and I like to look at it like if I was talking to somebody, or somebody was talking to me, would I want my civil liberties violated, and if so, for what reason, and all that good kind of stuff. So I guess totally cool you're filming.
Thank you. That's awesome, because it's such a controversial issue. Because the media, I feel like it tries to pivot us against one another, and there's so many different opinions out there. What would you say about gun confiscation and Second Amendment rights and all those things?
I don't know about them, like as far as what.
I mean, do you believe in the right to bear arms?
Sure. Yeah, I believe in the right to bear arms.
Of course. I mean, it's tough to be a police officer for us to put, for citizens to put themselves in your shoes is a difficult thing to do, because you have to worry about your safety all the time when you're at work, all the time.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't really take that into account, but, you see a lot of stuff on Facebook with the cops beating the crap out of some guy, and they don't ever always put things into context, and it's sad that, a few bad officers, and regardless of what department they might be with, can really put a frightening image into the public's mind about police brutality and all those kinds of things. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Every situation's different, You run into some people who... Officers are going to make split decisions to do something, and you have somebody who has months to tear it apart and evaluate it.
If there was martial law or some type of similar cataclysmic event or a nuclear attack or terrorist attack of a massive proportion, and would you fire on American citizens if you were ordered to, or would you stand down? Would you consider that to be a domestic threat?
A domestic threat?
If your superior was ordering you to fire on an American citizen or to infringe upon their constitutional rights.
Well, that's going way farther than infringing on somebody's constitutional rights. If you're talking about firing upon somebody, we all get choices in life. We get to choose to follow orders if we want to, or we get to choose to do what we feel is right on our own integrous and moral scale.
As an what is the distinction between... How do you make that decision? Where is the distinction between what's right and wrong when it comes to somebody's constitutional rights?
There's a fine line that's called the law can be used to define it, and then there's a line that every individual person, every officer is just like every individual person. You're going to evaluate something differently.
Absolutely.
So you hear the expression before somebody will say, "I follow the letter of the law." And other people will say, well, I'll follow the letter of the law, but I'll also follow what I think is morally correct, something along those lines.
So if you had received an order from your superiors to do something that to knowingly do something that was a constitutional violation of somebody's rights, would you carry that out?
No,
What would that look like to you, just as a hypothetical? What would that look like? Standing down from your superior, what's the protocol there? What would they do?
I have no idea. I wouldn't worry about it. I make decisions based on what I think I'm supposed to do. You're asking me if I see somebody doing something my superior told me to fire upon him, and I didn't think that was the right call, am I going to do it? No.
But maybe not just in the instance of firing on. That's pretty extreme. But what if it was just something that you knew was in violation of the Constitution, and it was an order that you had received?
No. I'm not going to go violate somebody's constitutional rights if you know it's not constitutionally allowable. I don't know what you're trying to...
Well, are you familiar with the National Defense Authorization Act?
No, fill me in.
It was signed into law December 31st, 2011, and it gives the president the right to indefinitely detain, torture, disappear citizens, no trial, no habeas corpus.
You're talking about under President Bush.
No, Obama signed that.
Oh, did he?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
And that's written into law, and it's a blatant constitutional violations. There's innumerable constitutional violations incorporated in this act. What would you say about that?
I'd have to research it to even know what it was about.
It's called the NDAA 1867. That's one of the things I talked to Atkins about. Yeah. And I think it's so important because, largely that would be carried out by different intelligence operatives and other types of things in order to get a terrorist or those kinds of things. What they wrote it into law for. But it's unconstitutional. The right to indefinitely detain citizens within our borders. No trial. Come and basically kidnap you in the white van and take you off, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, I would say so. A little bit.
Yeah, it's just, it startles me to think that there's not more. I hate to say education, because you guys are obviously a very intelligent department. I've dealt with lots of different officers in this department for various reasons, and it just makes me wonder why there's not more education in the departments about this. They don't teach you guys about these things and what to do in that kind of situation. What would you say about compartmentalization? Have you had any experience with that in your department?
I haven't. I love working for this department.
I think it's a good department.
We have pretty high education standards here. Good training. It's,
What'd you go to school for?
criminal justice.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
But I also served in the military, so.
Which branch?
In the Navy.
What'd you do there?
Where? Like,
in the
where
Navy.
I served?
Yeah, where'd you serve?
Oh, I worked with special operations teams.
Oh, you did? Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about anything?
Nah. No, of course not.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
what brought you over here? It sounds like most of your time you're over off at 75. So what brought you over here tonight?
Get this interview.
Get this interview?
Yeah.
Just waiting for an officer to show up?
Yeah, I grew up in a classified research and development project. I come from an intelligence family. My dad was a private pilot for George Bush Sr., all kinds of stuff. I come from a CIA family.
Okay.
And so it's just interesting.
Gotcha.
I talk about that stuff in international radio programs and stuff like that. And,
Cool.
one thing I'd like to tell you about, and something that we're going to be raising a lot of awareness about in this community and throughout, the country, is there's devices known to the World Health Organization, cell phone towers, which is a broad term.
Mm-hmm.
These are on public school property across this country. A very good example is Plano Senior High School.
Okay.
If you drive past there, I think it's the auditorium building. There's one right on top of it. It's in a very unsafe proximity of children. And the FCC is actively engaged in innumerable federal law violations right now. My name is Eugene Irvin. I am actively engaged in gathering intelligence and all the other things in order to file the largest lawsuit in American history.
Wow, really?
Yeah. When I say I come from an intelligence family, I mean it. And so we're putting some things together. It looks promising. I think that it's going to be very important to have people like yourself and citizens, parents, faculty of the schools to get behind us in these issues. And so really looking forward to doing that. What would you say about that? If you're dropping your kids off at school, you don't want them around harmful electromagnetic energy, do you?
No.
We're really trying to get people aware of these adverse health effects associated with these devices, and we have a precedent in the international community with the removal of these devices. Scandinavian countries, India, and so they've really already set the model for us, and largely the American public is completely unaware of what's going on. I mean, there's been over 1 million-fold increase, percentage-wise, in electromagnetic radiation that we're subjected to in the last 50 years. That's just a very conservative estimate. And
wow. It's crazy, man.
It is. It is crazy. And it affects us on a very fundamental level. I did an interview with a presidential hopeful for the 2016 election. His name's Andrew Bashaga, and he came out. He did research with different devices. Maybe you're aware of it, doing special ops, electronic warfare. I was on with the lady who wrote the book on counter-espionage. She was a signal security agency, had need-to-know clearance over entire divisions of the NSA and all this kind of stuff. And bottom line, they can target people with these devices in electronic warfare in order to do all types of things. And this technology, the CIA got a hold of it back in '81, and it went black. The guy who developed it was a guy named Eldon Bird, I think his name is. And, I call him a colleague. We kind of have some disagreements, but he interviewed him, Bashaga interviewed him, and they can send signals, they can send pictures, they can send words to the frontal lobe of your brain, 360 degrees of articulation from a quarter mile away. This is very real technology, and it could be incorporated into these types of towers and other things. It's not conspiracy theory, it's not conjecture, it's very real. And so we use these types of devices in special operations, other things as well now. I'd love to know what you did for the Navy.
Well,
were you a SEAL?
No, I didn't say that. Different stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service, man.
No, absolutely. You sound really passionate about what you're doing, man, so...
Absolutely. As you must be.
I love my job, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
When you risk your life out here.
Yeah.
What would you do if you knew there was a crooked cop in your department? What would you do?
You got to say something. If I knew about it, You know, you have to say something about it.
Yeah.
Not going to be one of those things where you're just going to be like, you know, because I imagine you have some connotation that you mean behind it. When I think crooked cop, you think it's something pretty deep seated.
Somebody tied in with a drug lord who works for a bunch
right,
of
yeah, so you're thinking
CIA
something
guys or something?
something pretty cryptic. Well, I don't know that somebody, if they were in with the CIA, doesn't necessarily mean that they're crooked.
No, it doesn't.
They're just on some next level stuff. But if you're talking like in with some kind of drug lord or something like that, you know, like I said, that's like a pretty cryptic interpretation of it, and that's something I would, yeah, if I had information on it, I'm not gonna bite my tongue about it.
I wouldn't either. I don't.
Nope, I don't either. No point in it. So, you know, that means you're sitting there and you're physically watching something, you see it happening, and you just do nothing. Nah, I don't believe in that.
Cool.
So, like I said, man, there's a fine line that's the law, and then there's the line that's integrity and morals. You're the one that has to go to sleep at night, be able to say, I did my job to the best of my ability while staying safe, keeping other people safe, you know, protect public rights. And, you know, cops don't just sign on to take people to jail, in my opinion. I didn't. I don't sign on just to take people to jail. I don't sign on just to stop people and detain them and waste their time. I signed on to protect people at the same time, you know.
Thank you for that, man.
Well,
That's awesome. I mean, it's a very admirable thing, and that's what, you know, it's important for public to hear that and to understand that. And that seems to be the resounding consensus amongst your department. And every single officer that I've talked to has, you know, had very similar thoughts on that. And I think that's very...
tonight? You talked to a lot of officers tonight?
Just one tonight, just yokel. But I talked to Atkins about this stuff, and I've talked to many different officers from several different departments who travel all over the country. And, you know, I'd say that there's a sense of division amongst different circles out here, and it seems to be that we're intentionally pivoted against one another. Maybe we do it to ourselves, I don't know, but you know, I feel like in the times that are coming ahead, maybe we're going to go through some transitional periods and stuff. It's going to be important for the public to be able to trust their officers.
Sure.
And for people, you know, for some people, cops are the bad guy. You know, there's so much. What would you say? You know, poverty, people who are born in. How do you judge that kid who basically watched his mom go out and turn a trick, and she comes back in and buys a crack rock from him? How are we going to judge him for doing that when he's only 14? It's all he ever knew. You know, and how do we deal with that situation, and how do we exercise compassion, all those kind of things, and bridge that gap where that guy thinks you're the devil, and you're trying to protect him. You think he's the devil, perhaps. You know, how do we bridge that gap?
I mean, if you said, like you said, if I'm there to help him, to actually try and physically help him, and he thinks I'm the devil, I mean, it changes mind. You know, hey. You'll see I'm not actually here to hurt you, because I understand exactly what you're saying. You need to deal with people like that all the time. It's, you know, they're born into it, they're raised into it. I mean, there's a whole lot of different reasons somebody gets into something, and just like on the opposite end, some people, more baffling to me would be somebody who comes from a good family. They don't come from any of that kind of background, and then they just seem very bent on, let me keep going down this road of doing illicit narcotics, driving while intoxicated, and they keep going, you know, and you're going to run across them, and then, you know, you go to court, and you'll become to know somebody very intimately when you deal with them enough times. You know their car, you know their name, you know where they are, you know, I mean, it's one of those deals where you're like, okay, and then just by happenstance, every time you make an encounter with them, they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. It's the same in reverse. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you have somebody who's doing this. Oh, okay, so here we are. This kid, he was raised into it. This is the only thing that he knows. You know? And then you have the other one who he's never had to know this his whole life, and yet here he is doing it. You know? I express compassion either way. There's always a root to it. There's a root to an understanding. You say, okay, so what is it? What is it, and how do I show you that I'm not actually here because I have a superb interest in just seeing you behind bars? You're helpless. You're hopeless. You know, I don't agree with that.
It sounds like you thought about that before. Obviously, you have to.
Well, you got to consider. Like I said, I'm a police officer here. I've been in the military for 13 years. I've run into a lot of different people in a ton of different walks in life internationally, and it's, you know, older you get, the more you grow up, the more you start to say, okay, well, this is kind of the way it is, and you have two choices. You really do. You have a choice to be that officer who can bring his own attitude into something, because you see that. I'm sure you have. If you've interviewed enough officers, you'll run into ones who bring their own attitude to the table. I don't agree with that. We're human. We all make mistakes, so I'll give you that. But
I was going to ask you, to touch on that, and thank you for that, because that's good to see somebody stand in that in the department. And what do you do in that example? I mean, do you approach somebody? What's the chain of command there? Like, if you see an officer who's kind of out of line, and you feel like he's out of line, what's the correct thing for somebody to do?
I mean, it depends on what kind of out of line we're talking. For me, I'm going to go talk to him. If I think somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, I think somebody's doing something that's definitely out of protocol. And you get that a lot here in this city. Like, hey, man, I don't think you can actually do that. We get into a lot of debate while on a call. Hey, can I search this car? Can I do this? Can I do that? There's a lot of debate that goes back and forth between us. We've got a very open debate forum with our legal advisors, and like I said, the focus is to do, okay, so what's the right thing to do? How do we get full protection over somebody's civil liberties while at the same time taking things off the streets that need to be off the streets? Certain type of drugs, dope, people who are driving intoxicated. How do you balance that? Because
it's a difficult thing.
It is a difficult thing.
Yeah. But lots of different dynamics at play there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you asked Yokel all this same stuff?
We talked a little bit. He told me, he was out from East Texas, and he's a real nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
He was a real nice guy. Yeah, he really was. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, and, I think that, there's been a time where I was out filming the moon, actually, and there's been some anomalous behavior with the moon and, events in the solar system, and I was kind of trying to document that, and they just brought me to the whole idea of this NDAA and all this other stuff. When trying to expose some of the things that I've exposed, it gives me great concern for my safety at some points, particularly with different officers and other things, because I've seen some pretty crooked stuff. I was telling Yoko, what I was telling Yoko about was, I've met crooked cops in a really nasty way, and I literally, they were about to off me. I had a hammer pulled back on my head, and long story short, I got out of there under very miraculous circumstances. But I don't really know where I'm going with that. I'm kind of dumbfounded to hear you say all this stuff, and to be able to meet you tonight. It's humbling, because I appreciate what you do, and it's nice to know that you're out there to try to help and protect citizens.
Oh, of course.
I think that's really good. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are scared these days, and martial law is coming and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Are you guys prepared for those types of situations? They talk to you about this stuff?
I mean, you're always going to know what martial law is. That's one of those things, man. I'll just give you my personal opinion on it. You pray for the best and hope, hope and pray for the best, but prepare for the worst. Like, martial law would be that'd be a crap scenario. There's no winning that. There's nothing good to it. And if you're as in deep as you sound like you are into understanding some kind of stuff, you don't have to go very far back. You can go to Katrina, and you already see an example of it.
That's an excellent example.
That's like the most recent, best example.
Thank you.
So, you hear things, you see things. There's some tricky stuff that was going on at Katrina, and you hear a lot of things.
Scalar weaponry, weather modification.
More than just that. I mean, you heard, if you read between the lines on things, that was not one of those deals. There was no evacuation. That wasn't really the big issue became, the governor and the president get in there fast enough, right? But if you read between the lines and all that, what you're really finding out is they finally did bring all this help and support into a city that is completely flooded, and they're not letting anybody out. Well, how'd you keep them in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they did. They kept them in.
And they were gun grabbing. People were dying.
Exactly.
Would you support an effort like that around here?
No. Hell no.
I don't think most of the people in your department would either.
No. I mean,
Well, hey, did you remember this thing down in Dallas when there was a protest down there at JFK? Mm-hmm. The chief or whoever, Dallas said, don't do anything to them. And then DHS federalized a bunch of cops, and they sent them in, and it got rough for a minute.
Right.
And it was just about to pop off. What would you say about the federalization and the militarization of our local and state police?
How do you explain it?
I mean, is it possible that there's an agenda out there that may be, a corporate interest or some other thing that's pushing an agenda, and they want to pull the strings at the back there? Is that possible?
You're talking about like Illuminati?
Sure.
Bilderberg.
Sure.
That kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's possible. The theories wouldn't exist with as much detail as they did if Bilderberg and Illuminati couldn't possibly exist. So, yeah, of course it's possible. You know.
Because there's a push to federalize our police and militarize them. And
see, I don't see that here. I really don't. Not in this city.
That's refreshing.
There was good reasons that I chose here. And if your experiences with Atkins and Yokel recently, you know, are as you say they are, then I think you're starting to kind of see a trend in this city.
I do.
With these officers, it's different. You know, I don't always experience all that in Dallas or everywhere else. Every city's different, but I think our city management's top notch. You know, it's.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you, there's some crooked cops out in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it. You hear a whole lot of stuff through the grapevine. I've heard that before.
You know,
crooked cops there. You hear there's crooked cops in Houston and Austin.
There was a guy. That one guy got busted selling all that coke to these guys, and it was a few years back.
Yeah.
Yeah, ripping off all the money and all that. So you know, it's just
sure.
It's sad that kind of contaminates the public's image or whatever. But
I got you. Did you record with Yokel and Atkins too?
Just when they first rolled up, I just do that for protection at first. You know, it's just you never know. You know,
sure, no,
you never know. You know, the kind of things I talk about on the radio. I've been censored. I mean, there's a bullet out there with my name on it. I know it.
Oh,
you know.
I never have. I record everything I do. Like
yeah.
Recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never have a problem with anybody recording anything I do. It helps keep both sides honest. To be honest with you.
Anything other than transparency invariably leads to corruption, is what I would say.
True.
You know.
Absolutely. So I was always a big fan of, you know, like we do like body cams and everything. So I've always been a big fan of both. It's like if you don't have anything to hide and you're not lying about anything, then always having your camera on should never be. So I'm a big supporter of it. And you'll run into officers who are like, oh, I hate the camera and I hate it. And it prompts me to want to know why.
Yeah, I bet it
does.
does.
Why do you hate the camera?
Particularly, and so, you know, being an officer,
sure.
When you're dealing with the public and there's weapons involved and all those kind of things, I mean.
Well, and people will lie on officers just like you'll hear stories about officers lying on people. You know, like it happens both ways.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's there for your protection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I never have a problem with anybody, you know, recording whatever while I'm talking to them. I get in on big stops a lot.
You know, there's been many instances out there where, you know, it's a scary deal sometimes to put a camera on a police officer because there's police officers out there who can't stand it. They freak out. They'll tell you to, put it down and they'll come at you.
It doesn't bother me. There's nothing illegal about it.
There's not. I'm well within my constitutional rights.
You're well within your constitutional rights to be here. And
absolutely.
I could have come up and asked how you know Atkins. You could have told me to beat feet. You could have been like, I don't want to talk to you. Get the hell away from me.
Right.
And
that's That's the first thing I did with Atkins. He rolled up on me late at night. I was in the middle of doing some stuff. The girl that I was dating, who's the niece of the lead plasma physicist for the HARP project. I don't know if you know what HARP is.
Heard of it?
Yeah. Bottom line, his name's Paul Bernhardt. He's Navy. He won an award out of the Navy. He won one of their most prestigious awards. Look him up, Paul Bernhardt. Type in Paul Bernhardt Navy.mil and you'll see him. But he rolled up on me, and the first thing I asked him, I said, "Am I being detained?" He said no, and I took off. He scared me, dude. He scared me, but no, he is a great. You know, it's humbling and refreshing to just think about that because so many people get caught up in fear or what they see in the media or these other types of things or the experiences they've had in their life. And when we get pivoted against each other like this and we don't exercise that compassion because we're in fear or whatever, we don't have a logical understanding of what's going on, we don't try to put ourselves in each other's shoes, bad things happen.
Sure. And
they're always avoidable. 9 times out of 10, a situation could have been resolved so much better. I'm sure you've seen that a million times. How long have you been with Plano?
A couple of years. Not too long. I've loved it, every minute of it since I got here.
Well, good.
Like I said, I think it's a great department.
I do too.
And it's all like, here's the deal. It's all a matter of public record. And you seem like a research guy. Obviously, you look into stuff. So if you were to go look at the specifications and standards that it takes to get on here versus other places, I think you'd find merit and sort of a foundation of what you find so refreshing about talking to some of the officers you have up here? Like, okay, now it's kind of starting to make sense.
I think you guys set a good model for that. What do you know about Moto Mesh?
Nothing. Zero.
It's the DoD contract, Motorola. It's the interface system for your communications. And it's all over. It's those little things that you see on the side of the road. They're on poles. It's all throughout the neighborhood. That's Moto Mesh.
Yeah.
It's what it kind of it's like a seamless network that monitors all the devices, your trucks,
Yeah.
everything.
Like LoJack.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more sophisticated. It's very it's very much like that.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I don't know much of anything about it. Moto Mesh, I don't know much.
Yeah, Yokel didn't either. That's interesting. I don't know what else I could add. I could sit here and talk to you about the Navy all day, but well, anything you want to add?
No.
Is there anything else I should ask you? I'm trying to rack my brain here. I'll tell you what, you're going to feel our presence this year.
Yep.
With these towers. You know, next time you drive past Plano Senior High School, note that tower on top of that damn building. Know it's a health concern, and the damn thing's coming down. It's coming down, man. The FCC is in federal law violation. That school, you know, they're trying to clean it up, but, you know, that thing doesn't belong on a school. It's not even the school's right to rent that thing out. I mean, it's a source of revenue. You know, I actually met with the guy who's best friends with the coach. You know, they go and buy uniforms for the teams. You know, you've got a national championship winning team like Plano. You know, they won some.
Right.
And that's a big deal. And they want to weasel their way in. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm out here basically trying to take to court and shove it up their, you know.
Sure.
So it's one of the reasons I come out here and put a camera on somebody walking up on me with a gun anytime. I don't care who it is.
Just kind of find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool, man. That's it. You're all right to be curious and ask questions and want to know stuff. And like I said, you sound like a research guy, so if that's what you're looking to do, then good luck with it, man.
Yeah.
You know?
My website is a calltoactions.com. It's plural. You can see the links to different radio interviews and other stuff that we've done on there. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Okay.
We back all of our stuff up with official military, government, and university documents.
Okay.
And, you know, you can always reach me there.
Calltoactions.com.
Yes, sir.
What's your name?
Eugene Irvin.
Eugene Irvin.
Yes,
Joe
sir.
Weber. Nice to meet you, man.
Very good to meet you, sir.
All right, I'm going to go protect the streets, man.
Do it, man.
Enjoy your night.
I feel safer. I literally feel safer. Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, man.